and welcome back to the BBB Brain Trust podcast, where you find out who to trust from the people you trust. I'm James Marin, marketplace investigator for BBB, serving Dallas, Lubbock, and Wichita Falls. Today's episode focuses on the BBB International Investigations Initiative scam study release, focusing on employment scams that are task-based. We are joined once again by our investigation specialist, Brian Edwards. Here is that conversation. We're here once again with Brian Edwards out of St. Louis BBB, assisting us from state of New York with our scam study. It's good to see you again, Brian.
Good to see you too. Thanks again for having me.
A little peek behind the curtain. We're starting a little bit later this year. That's okay. We had some preliminary housekeeping, but we are looking to get back on track. Let's start off with this year's first scam study, which is focusing on employment scams, but specifically the type that are task-based. What exactly does that cover?
Yeah, so I think some people probably have heard of employment scams before, and we've covered employment scams before, which are just, any scam related to somebody attempting to, find a job and essentially it's being put on by a fraudster and there's no real job and they're trying to steal money or information. But the reason we're rolling this out as kind of a near full study here is because these task-based scams is not just we're calling them, the FTC, that's what they're calling them as well, have really started to crop up really quickly, and we're seeing an increase in these types of scams. And what they are is, they are like these other job scams, and that people think they are getting a job, but it's very specific the type of job that they are getting. And people are being brought in to often it's maybe like videos online or give reviews for products or leave a comment for a product. And there's lots to get into, with what people are specifically doing there, but kind of the long and the short is that these scammers are setting up kind of these fake systems where people think they're doing these tasks. And as they do these tasks, they are racking up money and they get to see it on a screen, kind of like if you have, an app that you love where you're kind of like scoring points in a game. It's
Mm.
very much like that, essentially. So people are quickly seeing these amounts of money getting racked up that they're making, but then it twists at some point, and maybe the scammers will say, "Oh, to get your money out that you've earned, to get your 500 out, you need to pay 50 in." And if somebody does that, then they essentially start ratcheting up the number until they get them handing over sometimes thousands of dollars.
Sounds like it's like a lot of employment scams that we encounter in our work, but also the consumers are reporting to us via the BBB scam tracker. Now, you said liking videos. You also mentioned, I believe, commenting on similar types of content. Would this also encompass somebody who is solicited to review products on Amazon or something like that? But obviously, they're products that they've never even bought or probably touched, right?
Yep, and you're absolutely correct. A similar type of thing, and we've certainly seen it's quite popular on, yeah, Amazon or other e-commerce websites. And the tricky part is sometimes we're seeing it looks like possibly scammers are essentially maybe running a scam on another website, and that's why they're getting the reviews. But we've also seen fake imposter, let's call them Amazon, or say it's a YouTube website where the scammers
Mhm.
just make it look like that website and it's not real at all. So it's all a falsehood essentially. So there's kind of a few different ways that it works, but exactly, yes, it works. It's happening on commerce websites as well as, video sharing websites and things like that.
You've given us a little bit of info as to how they present. Let's see if we can follow a little bit of what we know through the breadcrumbs that we've been receiving from these reports. What from the study shows is the main way that consumers are coming into contact with this type of scam.
Yeah, so we are seeing an explosion generally of text, SMS-based scams. And it's not necessarily just text through your phone, though. It's through texting applications like WhatsApp or Telegram as well. So we're seeing people get a lot of, you get a out of the blue message essentially on a messaging platform that says, "Hi, I heard you're looking for work. I work with so and so company. Would you like to apply for the job?" Essentially. And that's the scripts are very similar across all these scams that we're seeing. It's a one paragraph text. It's a enticing sounding job. It usually sounds pretty easy and has pretty good pay.
If you can, just off the top of your head, give me the most generic but common type of message that a consumer might get.
Yeah, so we got a bunch of reports from no idea why this name was chosen. the scammers would say, "Hi, I'm Goldie. I work for YouTube's, product service, and we work with creators on the website to boost placement of videos on YouTube. We're paying $50 an hour. You can work remote whenever you'd like to. If you're interested, please click on this link or reply to this message." That's off the top of my head, so it's not exact, but that's about the full extent of what people are getting right away. And as you can imagine, that's a text type message. It's easy to send out a lot of those. So I think a lot of people have probably seen these as well and have, whether they've been dealing with the scam or not, they've at least encountered this, I would bet, in the wild.
Understood. Let's follow this progression a little further. So let's say that I am a consumer who has received one of these messages. What should I be looking for in this message that could possibly immediately tell me red flag or danger?
The key for these actually, and how I'm warning a lot of people, is as good as it sounds, very few of us are getting job offers out of the blue. And so I think right away, any job offer, even if you've been looking for work, even if you've signed up for a website to
Hmm.
get notifications and things like that, almost all of these websites are doing that through email. So if you're getting this text right off, that's already probably a pretty bad sign. Some of them do come by email, so that doesn't mean that you can't get them by email. But
Hmm.
I think that's kind of the easy warning for this one that I'm hoping we can really spread the word about is if you're getting a text about a job, unless somebody says, "Hi, I got, your name from this person that you also know," and you can then call that person and ask about it, it's probably a scam.
Good tip that if you don't remember or know immediately that you've been awaiting some kind of word because you know you applied for a job, then obviously you should probably take a beat and really consider before responding to anything. But usually these types of messages have a link, don't they?
They do it. They do. And
Hmm.
I think that's a great thing to bring up because what I do recommend is who knows, maybe you will get a job offer that way, but what you can always do is go research online then to see whether that job is posted online as well, which if you're getting a cold reach out about a job, again, 99% of the time it's going to be posted online. So if you can't find it online yourself, not through that link that was sent, that's another huge red flag. And even if you're still interested in that point, go ahead and call the company. And if they wanted to be reaching out to you about the job, they'll be happy that you called to make sure that it was real. But just don't trust that link that was sent and don't trust that number that sent it right away.
Understood. Would I be correct to deduce that your study results were showing that this really affects more people on the consumer side of things and maybe not as many on the business side? Or would I be incorrect in that?
No, I think that's the right way to put it. But I think interestingly, the way that a lot of scams work is so yes, I would call this a consumer-based scam primarily. But there is always kind of the second order effect of there are these companies being impersonated that they're having their brand, hurt when somebody gets scammed and they think that that scammer is associated with that company essentially. Obviously, many people realize at some point that it's not the case, but no company wants their name associated with this type of scam. We have
Hmm.
links in the study that people will be able to see that show that these companies are warning about it. So they're certainly worried about it. There's kind of that second order effect. But yes, I would say the money being lost, the true victims in these cases are certainly the public and the consumers.
Okay. We've got the contact, we've got kind of the messaging, we have essentially who they're trying to target. How sophisticated does this get though? Because let's say we're at the stage where I have responded, I've clicked the link, maybe even I still don't feel hesitant. I've given information. How sophisticated do these get? Surely there it has to fall down at some point. What's usually the next step?
So I think that unfortunately, as we talk about with a lot of these, they're getting more and more sophisticated, and that's really what caught our eye about this one. Is I had mentioned that there's kind of this like app gamified type platform, and people will be able to check out pictures of what these look like in the study. I talked to people who dealt with these, and they were able to send me screenshots of what these look like, and
Oh, fantastic.
they look like an app that people use regularly. They don't look like, you don't go on it and be like, this is clearly, something is wrong with this. It looks like an app that somebody could absolutely be using. So I think the
Hmm.
sophistication is still quite high at that level. I think where the cracks start to show is They'll often start to get people involved in Bitcoin or cryptocurrency and things like that. And I
Mm,
think that, as we tell people a lot, not that those don't have legitimate uses, but your job, unless it specifically has to deal with those in a very, sophisticated way, your job probably isn't going to be asking you to buy or send any Bitcoin. And so that really should be a red flag there. But I think people can really get through this process and kind of start doing the so-called work that's involved with it, and it can still feel very sophisticated up to that point.
understood. And so you mentioned, like you said, the next progression is when they're starting to require more money or advance fee, I think is what we call it here. So, with that being the case, would you say that the point at which they start asking you for money, whether it's cash, whether it's a transfer of ACH funds, or whether it is cryptocurrency, would you suggest that the minute that the job starts asking you for money, you should absolutely know that this is not legitimate?
Absolutely. I think that's long been one of our top warnings for employment scams is jobs should not be charging you money at all. That is even if you are working at a job that is a, legitimately registered company and it turns out, they aren't a scam on their face, but they're asking you for money, that should still be giving you pause. No job should ever be asking you to hand over money to get money that you have earned. So yes, absolutely. We hope that at least, and if that's the message we can get out, because that can stop people really from getting truly, hurt by these, is, the moment a job asks you for money, turn and ask somebody that you know about it. Be like, does something seem off about this? Because yeah, that's the red flag in these cases.
You told us about how anything advance that they want you to pay your job, supposedly, huge red flag. The fact that it is unsolicited or you don't recall contacting this business, another red flag. That they contacted you directly, when you didn't give a number out, another red flag. In the event that I am someone who has gone all the way to conduct a task, maybe I've loaded some cryptocurrency or I've paid an advance fee. And then I find out I've done all of these tasks, I've gamified my way to some kind of earnings. Then what happens with these scams? Do I just get my money?
That would, if that was the case, that would be nice.
That'd
But
be a job, I think.
yeah, I think that what can be good, at least in these cases, is if people follow some of these red flags early, they can often end up only $50 out or something, let's say, because what the scammers are doing at first is they're only asking for small amounts of money. They're essentially kind of hooking people with that and getting them, making them feel like they really are going to not just want the money they've earned at this point, or they believe that they've earned, but also their actual money as well. And so they start to increase the amounts of money. So I give you $50, I've done it, and then it puts my account in the red, and they're like, great, you can do another 50 tasks essentially. You do your 45 of your tasks, it looks like you're gonna about to earn $1,000. You finish the 50th task, and now you owe $200 to be able to get that out. And that cycle repeats over and over and over. And they'll keep going as long as you'll keep giving money, and they'll keep coming up with excuses. Some of the highest loss cases, people lost, over $100,000. And so the scammers will just keep ratcheting up
Wow.
that amount until the person steps away.
Okay, so that you beat me to my next question because I was going to say what kind of dollar amounts are we talking? So let's go total. Let's go big. What did you find in your study was maybe the amount lost last year, I'm guessing? Did you
So
have
we
that amount?
So we typically don't do that just the total amount just because of some limitations of the data. The way we do it though is we do median loss, which I think is a really nice way to look at it actually, because it kind of gives
Understood.
people a picture of what they might lose in a case like this. And the median loss last year was $1,000. So that's, that's right in the middle. That's a significant amount of money that people have lost in these cases. And then that upper bound, like I said, is kind of in the above $100,000, and some people could lose as little as that first $25 in. They'll ask them for money again and they'll say, oh, okay, I understand what's happening here. So it really is
Mm.
anywhere in between there, but that $1,000 was the median. I think the one, silver lining we could put in this is our reports skyrocketed last year. They doubled compared to the previous year, but the median loss has gone down over the last 3 years. So we're happy to say, I think that at
Hmm.
least we can hope at least that people are catching on earlier, which certainly limits some of the loss. But $1,000 is, of course, a significant amount of money still.
Let's touch on the fact that $1,000, again, to any individual, it might be the biggest deal, it might be a middle deal, it might be a little deal. We have no way to know. In the current climate that we're recording this podcast in, prices have gotten expensive for a lot of daily things. So, in this climate, would you anticipate this scam could proliferate more or less?
Yeah, and so I talked to some experts to kind of talk about this, and we had to speculate a bit only because it's impossible to know the future, but certainly myself looking into this, I think people at BBBs who have covered employment scams for a long time, and then outside experts as well, it's certainly there scams tend to track economic or social trends. When COVID was happening, COVID, relief related scams rose.
They were
And
everywhere.
yeah, absolutely. And so, yeah, absolutely. As people are, maybe having some issues finding work or out of work, or if things are getting more expensive, yes, we're certainly thinking that this may rise as an issue as
Mm.
well. It's impossible to say just looking at our data that that's the reason that it rose, but it's hard not to at least think about that as the possibility and wonder if current trends continue, whether the scams will continue to rise or not.
As with any consumers or even business owners who are consumers of other businesses, we tell them that if at any point they believe that they were a victim or a near victim of a scam that they had interaction with, to report it to bbb.org/scam tracker. They've updated that landing page, but it is still very easy to go in there and submit your report. Again, as we follow the track of this, let's say that, I've gone through this scam, I've come to realize, oh, geez, this is not legitimate, and maybe I'm out the $1,000. Okay. What can I do at this point? What do I do when I realize that I've been had?
Unfortunately, as I have to tell a lot of people that I talk to, many times when the money is sent, it's already gone.
Hmm.
However, I do think that there are steps that people should immediately take. If you've sent
Okay.
cryptocurrency, you've likely, started on a legitimate website where you purchase it. So immediately reach out to them, tell them I was scammed. Here's the transactions that I was scammed on. Here's what happened. Here are messages supporting that. Will they, be able to recover it? The chances are low, but the chances are never zero. So you should do that immediately. Same with a traditional bank account. If you had sent it through there, reach out to your bank immediately. Tell them you were scammed. Ask them to open an investigation. Provide proof that that's what happened. And those are the first steps that you can take towards if there's any chance of recovering. That's the hope. Then we recommend, it's kind of at this point you're I think, one, it can help people understand the next best steps of how to protect themselves, but also it helps, others who might not have been affected by this to report it to your attorney general, report it to law enforcement, report it to us, report it to the FTC, to the FBI, kind of get the word out about what happened and provide as much information as you can, just because if you're able to do that, it can help get the word out about these. And then finally, if you've provided any personal information, other than your name and number, say maybe bank accounts or, your social security number, if it's bank accounts, change your password, set up any alerts that you can. If it's your social security number, set up credit monitoring or watch your credit to make sure that no accounts are opened. So kind of some of the typical steps that we recommend after somebody's dealt with a scam to protect your information after that.
And this, I think, brings us to a good point to talk about the different kinds of payments that they solicit for, because different platforms offer different levels of security for the consumer, but sometimes different levels of recourse, or at least maybe the speed at which something can be done to assist them. So, in your data, do you have information as to what were maybe the top two most common payment methods used for these types of scams?
So I don't have that calculated exactly, but I can tell you, pretty well just from digging through the data that payments through Bitcoin and payments through Tether, which is another cryptocurrency, were some of the really common ones that
Hmm.
I was seeing. So I can't say that they're top two, but those are ones that I was seeing a lot. And I think the reason that Tether is chosen often is because it's a so-called stable coin essentially, and it's linked to the US dollar. And so the shorthand for it will include USD in it a lot of the time. And so people, I think there's a legitimacy felt about that because it has the term US dollar in it, essentially. And so I think that's often the case why it's chosen.
That's very interesting. You just gave me some info there, so I will have to look further into that. We had heard rumors of that a couple years ago, so it would not be surprising that they went ahead and moved with that. Would it also be reasonable to deduce that the reason those types of payments are very popular is because they offer the consumer fewer recourse to either stop payment or recover funds? Is that correct?
Absolutely. I think scammers are always trying to find, ways that they can get people to send money. That's essentially an instant transfer. And, a lot of like payment apps, things like Venmo and Zelle, those function in the same way a lot of the time. But yes, scammers are just always looking for different ways to do that. And when it is an account like Venmo or Zelle, they'll maybe have to have an account that they're keeping active to get those funds, or a bank account the same way. Or sometimes with cryptocurrencies, they can just, send it wallet to wallet essentially, and it's easier for them to maintain that. But I think the key aspect is scammers are just always shifting and moving around too, because they're, kind of staying unpredictable essentially. So it's sometimes it feels like a little less rhyme or reason and a little more what's the best way at the moment for them to do it, and they might go back to one later if it ends up being the best one.
I see, I see. Definitely has educated me on some of these scams that I've been assisting to process that I get the narrative that is shared by the person reporting. Obviously, I'm not getting this level of detail about the bigger picture, so this is really helpful. I appreciate that. Are there any other direct tips for someone maybe if they've just gotten the message, but they didn't follow through, or perhaps for somebody who is they've only gotten through the stage of handing over maybe some personal information, but no actual monies. What could somebody do at maybe one of the either one of those stages that is different?
I still would recommend if you've handed over personal information, kind of either locking down your accounts or setting monitoring for all those. I would say that more often than not, we're seeing that the point of these scams is to get money rather than personal information, but certainly
Mm,
they are attempting to steal personal information a lot of the time as well. So, like I said, kind of locking those down or monitoring them is key. I think, if somebody's still in the really early stage, or maybe their interest is still there in the job, but they aren't sure about it, one tip that we're giving a lot is if they're kind of saying you can start right away, be like, hey, I'd love to have a video call to get to know you, to get to know who I'm working with. Scammers aren't going to get, at least as of now, with AI, things could change. But as of right now, scammers are not getting on and doing a video interview with you for a job. So that's a really good way. If they're like, no, 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 it's fine. Let's just start right away. You can kind of think, when has a job ever been like, no, we don't want to get to know the employee that we're about to hire?
That's a good point. And I think that brings to mind an old commercial to date myself, but the slogan was reach out and touch someone. Might be just a good mantra if you get any message that you're not quite sure if it's legitimate.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're here just about at the end of our time. Again, Brian, thank you so much. We've been eager for this to come out, and hopefully we won't have any further delays. But if we do, we will still be here to deliver the scam results to our viewers and our listeners. If you're able to, what might be the topic of the next scam study that will be released?
So we are looking into essentially as consumers write into BBB, they write, reviews and complaints and things about how they're dealing with, customer service aspect of different jobs and how companies are handling that and how they, respond to that. So this is actually going to be a bit of a less of a consumer focused one, actually, though, and more of a business focused one. And we'll be helping businesses understand how they can better, handle those interactions with consumers online, especially in the age of AI as well. And as they're integrating a lot of tools in that way as well. So I think we'll have some really actionable tips in how people can better interact with their customers and also make their customers happy when they're attempting to interact with them.
And you bring up one topic that I did want to touch on with this. So thank you for answering that question. AI. We hear about it all the time. We're seeing it more and more, sometimes whether we want to or not. Where are you seeing AI come into the picture with this particular kind of employment scam?
And so I think talking to experts about this, because one of the things about our BBB data is it's reported by the consumers and the public themselves, and so it's a little tough for us to know 100% when somebody sends something in, whether the scammer used AI or not. However, there are experts tracking this, and I talk to them a lot about this, like I said, this kind of explosion of text-based scams. And there's a lot of smart people in the field who are saying it sure seems likely that as it's easier to generate text and it's easier to automate processes, that if people are getting a lot more scam texts and the scam texts are sounding more sophisticated, that there's maybe a high chance that they're using AI to do that. Do we know that for sure in individual cases or even, throughout our data? No, we can't say that. But experts are certainly starting to say, hey, it's very likely here at least that there's some AI involved and it's going to make it easier. And unfortunately, I think people aren't going to like hearing this. I don't like saying it, is that it's likely going to mean that we're going to be encountering more scams as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's that is the double-edged sword of technology. It's really about what do you intend to use it for? And for the people that use it for good, there are benefits, and then sadly for the people that use it for ill, unfortunately, they have some weird successes as well. So,
Yes,
but no,
unfortunately.
that's and I will say that that's going to be something we'll touch on in our other conversations because AI is just, it's just proliferating. We know from the work you do, but also from the work I do, that we see it. We're just seeing it more and more every day. Usually, yeah, in the messaging. Sometimes it's the fake voices on a voicemail. Sometimes it's the texts. So
Yeah. Yeah, we'll have plenty to talk about that in the near future, I think.
it's good for content. Hopefully, we can make it good for consumers.
That's my hope as well. I think we hopefully can.
Fantastic. Well, Brian, thank you again. I appreciate it. We always appreciate all the hard work you do, and I look forward to all those future study releases. For anybody who wishes to report, bbb.org/scam tracker. And are they still able to view studies on the website?
For our bbb.org/scam studies, they can check out all of our past studies as well as our new ones on there.
Fantastic. And it will be the next one to appear. Thank you so much, Brian. I appreciate it.
Thank you, James. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you again to Brian Edwards for joining us with his results and insights into this recent scam study. If you believe that you've been the victim of a scam or know someone who has, please report it to bbb.org/scam tracker, as well as your local law enforcement agencies. You may also view this scam study as well as past scam studies at bbb.org/scam study. Please like, follow, and review our podcast on Spotify and on YouTube, coming soon to other platforms that host podcasts this year. We thank you for joining us, and we look forward to having you next time. Thank you and take care.